Coming up, it's the pinnacle of visual arts, and a Choctaw artist is the star. We learn how Jeffrey Gibson will represent the United States. Plus, on this week's IndigiPolitics, we're talking how impactful the Native vote will be in upcoming elections. And future Native lawyers go head-to-head in a national moot court competition. That's all coming up next on the ICT Newscast.
This program is made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, a private corporation funded by the American people.
Support for the ICT Newscast with Aaliyah Chavez comes from the Arizona PBS studios in Phoenix at the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism and Mass Communications at Arizona State University.
Amirawa Hopa. Thank you for joining us. I am Aaliyah Chavez. The Supreme Court has added a case to its docket this term involving federal Indian law and healthcare services. Last week, the justices heard oral arguments in Becerra versus San Carlos Apache Tribe. All around the country, the Indian Health Service, also known as IHS, administers health care for tribes. However, Congress allows tribes to contract with the IHS to run its own programs. The question before the High Court is whether the IHS must pay contract support costs, not only to support IHS-funded activities, but to also support tribal expenditure income collected from third parties. This case was previously two cases, one involving the San Carlos Apache and another involving the Northern Arapaho, but attorneys for both decided to consolidate. Ahead of oral arguments, several Native organizations filed amicus briefs in support of tribes, including the National Indian Health Board and the National Congress of American Indians. A ruling is expected this summer, and regardless of what happens, the case could have major impacts on IHS funding moving forward. Yurok citizens in California are celebrating a landback victory. That's after the National Park Service, the state's Parks Department, and a private organization agreed to return 125 acres to the tribe. ICT's Nika Bartu-Smith starts our reporting.
So not only is this a huge landback win for the Yurok tribe, it also is a big deal nationally because it marks the first time that a tribe has entered into a co-management agreement with the national parks on land that will be owned by the tribe, right? Because this land will be back under tribal ownership by 2026.
Really excited about this agreement, this work that we're doing as stewards of the people who took care of land. It's a beautiful piece of property surrounded by the creek, the river. We're doing river restoration work to improve habitat for salmon. We're surrounded by old growth redwoods. We've always used redwoods in the land as resources, as tools. We use redwoods to build our homes. We use redwoods to dance and prayer. We use it for our boats. So it lines with us in the heart of who we are as Yurok people.
So the land is 125 acres called Orao, renamed by the tribe. And not only is it a gateway to the Redwoods National Park, it also is roughly the center of the traditional homelands of the Yurok tribe itself.
We're looking to build a visitor center and a cultural center on this piece of property, being able, because it is the gateway with our ancestral territory. And we want to share that experience. And we want to share this with our brothers and sisters across Indian country, because this is not just a win for Yurok. This is a win for Indian country.
An agreement with the U.S. Department of Agriculture and a tribal college will support Indigenous seed sovereignty distribution. Nuweta Hidatsa Sathnish College will work with the USDA in a collaborative effort to increase the number of traditional varieties of seeds of the Mandan, Hidatsa, and Arikara Nation crops. The initiative will amplify the college's traditional seed cache and increase seed accessibility to tribal citizens. This agreement builds upon the USDA's partnership with tribal communities, which aim to advance food sovereignty efforts to further incorporate tribal research priorities and knowledge. While all eyes are on college basketball right now, high school hoops wrapped up last month through tournaments of their own. In South Dakota, Pine Ridge made it to the finals. SDPB producer Jonathan Nez has this story.
The culture we built is like, everybody does it. Everybody does morning shooting. Everyone does, lifting weights. When we get on our off-season stuff, everybody's buying into getting good grades, being in school every day. And, I keep telling everyone that you can't build something this strong and powerful without building it with your community. The boys, they really play for each other. And we got this saying, we say, good shots for great shots. And what we try to, emphasize on our program is when everybody touches the ball, everybody's locked in. That ball's power. So, when you touch the ball, you're more locked in defense, and you're more locked in rebounding. You're more, pushing the ball up, playing for each other. So, that's our energy. That's our sun, that ball. I want to play fast-paced, and I don't like to label it like that. But I want to play fast-paced like we do around the reservation. But at the same time, to be successful in this state, you got to have a half-court game like you do in East River. So, what we're trying to teach them and what we've kind of succeeded this year is playing both styles. We try to blend that all together because, you got to do it all to win these, especially to win these 3 games. I told them it's not about me. It's everything I do is for them. So, they're be remembered as heroes forever. Means the world to me. I would never ask any of my players or coaches to do anything that I wouldn't do. So I'm just grateful for, every single one of them, even down to the managers and our little water boys, It's special to me, all of them.
On this week's IndigiPolitics, we learn about the races where the Native vote will be key in upcoming elections, including in Arizona, where former Navajo Nation President Jonathan Nez is running for Congress. In addition to that, there have been important voting rights rulings in Montana. ICT political correspondent Pauly Denetclaw is here with regular contributor Holly Cook Macarro. She is the founding principal and president of The Angle, and she's also a board member of IndigiPolitics, the parent company that owns both ICT and the ICT Newscast.
Welcome back to the newscast, Holly.
Hi, Pauly. It's good to see you.
So first, you did attend ICT's Native Vote panel at the Reservation Economic Summit earlier this year. And while I was on that panel, I really did want to know your thoughts on what you were looking at in terms of what congressional races or what races in general could be determined by the Native vote.
Well, there are only a few of those in the country, as you know, and a few of those are competitive this cycle. I first start looking at our Native candidates, of course, but those that can be swung by the Native vote certainly are Senator Tester's race in the state of Montana. The presidential race can be swung by the Native American vote in the state of Arizona, and they can affect the United States Senate race there as well. We're hopeful that the Native American vote population in Arizona's 2nd district could also be impactful. Now, Nevada's U.S. Senate seat, incumbent Senator Rosen there is working hard on the Native vote as well. That is going to be a very tough race, and it could be won in the single digits. And if that's the case, then the Native American vote could have a huge impact on there. So really, when you look at it overall, there is a possibility that the Native American vote, this could be a banner year in terms of swaying the majority in the U.S. Senate. Right now, we have a 1-seat majority in the House. That is going to be hand-to-hand combat district by district. And certainly, if it comes down to Arizona again as what it's looking like as one of the main battleground states, the Native American vote is getting a lot of attention. So there's huge potential, and it's going to be an exciting few months in front of us.
And Holly, can you talk a little bit? We are seeing again a rematch between President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump. And in that race, the Native vote was very key. And can you talk a little bit more about the importance of the Native vote in that election and how it could possibly come into play again this election?
Yes, as you know, as we move into this cycle, all the talk about battleground states, those states where they're not decidedly red or decidedly blue, where what we call purple, and they could go either way. And that is where the candidates are going to focus their time, their money, and efforts on turning out the vote. Now, those states this year are the classic ones in the Midwest with Michigan, Wisconsin. Both of those also have very competitive Senate races. We've got Montana, where that seat is not that is not a battleground state for the presidency, but it is for the Senate. And then we go into Arizona and a few other states as well. Of those, Arizona is certainly the state with the most opportunity, with about 5.5%, 6% of the population in the state. That state is going to be won by, we won't be looking at percentage points. We're going to be looking at the number of ballots, and it was won by just over 10,000 ballots in 2020. So it's going to be very close again as we move towards November.
And speaking of Arizona, former Navajo Nation President Jonathan Nez is running for Arizona's 2nd congressional district. The incumbent in that seat is Representative Eli Crane, and that seat in particular is a more conservative district. And so my question to you, Holly, is what is the likelihood that former Navajo Nation President Jonathan Nez will be able to overcome incumbent Eli Crane?
You know, that's an uphill battle. The Partisan Voter Index, which is a measure of the voting strength, they take registered voters, compare them to each other, weight past voter turnout, and the Partisan Voter Index is an R+6, so leaning towards 6 points in the Republican favor. Eli Crane is one of the more conservative members of Congress. He's one of the small group who voted to oust Kevin McCarthy last fall, and as a very active member. So he's also a freshman. So we're not sure how all of that is going to play out with the constituency in Arizona's 2nd district. Now, the issue of abortion is really something that is driving a lot of what I think are normally Republican voters away from and towards Democrats with their reproductive rights platform. There is, I think, a huge opportunity if Jonathan Nez can raise the money, if he is good on the stump and really, gets out there and works that, there's a huge opportunity to flip that seat. I don't think anybody's putting it in a toss-up status yet, but we're still early. We're, the beginning of April, and it's going to be a long summer.
And in Montana, the state Supreme Court there struck down laws that said that disenfranchised Native voters. And so can you tell us a little bit more about that case and the importance of, in general, cases like this?
And we've seen more of these. We saw that in North Dakota, where they had the tribal ID requirement, knowing full well that they wanted the tribal IDs to have our address, knowing full well so many reservations don't have street addresses. And so in Montana, what they looked at was same-day registration and third-party ballot collecting, where someone else can turn in your vote for you. So there were 2 state laws that were passed. The Montana Supreme Court found that those laws hindered the Native Americans' access to the ballot and violated the Montana Constitution in terms of their right to vote. So it was a huge victory for Native American voting advocates. Western Native Voice was one of the lead plaintiffs, along with several of the tribes in the state, and some other voting organizations, along with the Democratic Party of Montana. So that was a huge victory in terms of making sure that access to the ballot is ensured for Native Americans in Montana. Now, it's one of the most, and folks can say, well, it said, really nothing about Native Americans, but Montana is one of the least diverse states in the country. It's 88% white people. There are little over 6.5% that are Native Americans, less than 1/2 of 1% are African American or Asian. So the target there really was Native Americans, and that was a huge win for Indian country. And I think really, sends a message to other states that may be thinking of doing the same thing.
And then just very briefly here, Holly, before we wrap up, historically, has the Native vote been attacked through state, bills and redistricting?
Yeah, definitely. I think through redistricting is one of the reasons why there's never been a Native American from the state of Arizona sent to the United States Congress, which seems like a travesty, right? The Navajo Nation in and of itself, like-minded communities, all of those standards that go into redistricting should be empowering the Native American vote. We've sent Native Americans to Congress, 11 Native Americans to Congress, not one from Arizona, and a state that has such a huge impactful population. It continues to be a travesty. That's a result of redistricting. These state laws, like I said, we have had North Dakota, we've had Montana, and we're winning those cases, thankfully. But yes, I do. There is a history of states and state courts really being the forum to attack the ability of Native Americans to vote.
Well, that's all the time that we have today, Holly. Thank you again so much for joining the newscast.
Yes, thank you, Pauly. It's good to see you.
The work of our next guest is bringing Mississippi Choctaw heritage to the world stage. Jeffrey Gibson is a MacArthur Genius Fellow whose multimedia work is the featured exhibition at the prestigious Venice Biennale. Shirley, Sneve, and Sandra Schulman have this conversation.
My work is very much about representation of cultural and historical narratives that, for whatever reason, have been deemed as minorities or peripheral, rarely kind of centralized. And I think the poem, which is written by a lady Long Soldier, who's Lakota, her poem Hesepa, when I read it, there's one section, and she writes sometimes in a way that the typography is like concrete poetry and it takes a shape. And so the phrase that we're using comes from a piece of Hesepa, which is, it's a square. And it talks about kind of the exchange of how we see each other. And there's one line in there, it says, the space in which to place me. And I think I really wanted to see the Pavilion as an invitation, of course, to Indigenous people globally, but also, really an inclusive space of other cultures and other people from other backgrounds. It is not meant to be a new exclusive space. It's meant to be as inclusive as we can be, as I can be. My dad is Mississippi Choctaw, and I'm a member of Mississippi Choctaw. And then my mom is Cherokee from Oklahoma. And they're both born in the 40s, and they met actually at boarding school. My dad met my mom's brother at Haskell, and when he would go home with my uncle, and that's where he initially met my mom. They got married. My dad was drafted into the Vietnam War, and once the war was over, he continued working as a civil engineer with the government, and so that led to us moving around, during my childhood. I was raised to it's never been a question to me that I was Choctaw. It's always how I've identified. And my tribal chief and my family, we would go visit. And I was always the grandson, like the city kid grandson. Some people would make fun of me for the way that I talked, but I always just remember being very embraced. My grandmothers in particular, I was very close to, were always just hugely supportive of me. They always wanted to know what I was making. They would always, ask me to draw something for them. And then when I was in college, I did reach out to Chief Philip Martin, who was our tribal chief, and I wanted to go and teach art on the reservation when I graduated. And that was in my junior year when I wrote him. And he wrote me a really nice letter back, just simply saying, thank you for your interest, but they had actually shut down all arts education in the school. And they had shifted to trade skill-based technical school. And that was really Chief Martin's goal, was financial stability and employment with the tribe. And he was our chief for over 40 years. I want to say 47 years. But he said to me, he said, good luck. I wish you all well. Of course, we're here. We want to help you if we can. And he said, and you would also need a graduate degree to teach here. So I remember holding on to that letter, and I had met him before because, when you go to Mississippi, he would be at family functions and stuff. And I would go back and I would visit Chief Martin, and I would take him a painting, and I would go visit Nan, and I still wanted to go and teach. And he said to me, he said, honestly, he said, there's not really any place for what you do here. He said, you're going to serve us better if you go out into the world and, carry proudly with you that you're a Choctaw man and you're going out and you're making your art. He said, and just know that as part of his plan, he would go in front of Congress. And at the time, what his goal was to bring industry that was going to south of the border. He wanted to bring it to central Mississippi. And he was successful in doing that. And by the 90s, he shifted the employment rate of Mississippi so that the tribe became the largest employer with a surplus of employment. Our tribal kind of motto is Choctaw self-determination. And he would say that to me. And I just remember, I feel with my dad, that's who my dad is. It's who, I don't know. So I've never not felt Choctaw. I have felt the unusual Choctaw person who was moving around the world, but I've never not felt Choctaw.
Jeffrey Gibson's exhibition at the U.S. Pavilion opens April 20th and runs through November. The actual contents of the interior and exterior neoclassical building is under wraps, and you can, of course, tune in once the exhibit is unveiled later this month.
Ganabutchwi minogishika noongum. Perhaps today will be a good day. Ganabutchwi minogishika noongum. The word ganabutch is talking about maybe or perhaps. We is a future tense. Minnow, talking about something good. And gishika means day. And then our word noongum is today. Putting it all together, ganabutchwi minogishika noongum. Perhaps today will be a good day.
Law students from around the United States are fresh off excitement in the 32nd annual moot court competition. The Native American Law Student Association, also known as NALSA, created the event to allow students studying Indian law to argue a case in a mock setting. Reporter Robin Iron covered the event where hundreds of soon-to-be Native lawyers competed, all to be named the best.
The Native American Law Student Association, or NALSA, was created for law students interested in Indian law or tribal law. Second-year law student Sapphire Carter, a member of the Chippewa Cree tribe, helped organize this year's competition.
It's important to have a Native American attorney arguing these issues because we are the people that are experiencing it every day. So we know how those laws and policies actually affect our people.
51 teams competed from more than 20 law schools. The National NALSA Moot Court Competition brings teams together to participate in oral arguments at a Supreme Court level.
National Moot Court Competition, it's essentially fake court.
Eldred D. Licenci, president of National NALSA, said the executive board run by students was established to conduct the competition.
It's where the students have a problem that's delved into federal Indian law topics. This year it's about water law and what that means for our communities to defend our water rights. And so what these teams are doing is it's 2 teams of 2 who will argue with each other in front of judges.
When you have people who never really experience those policies on the ground, they're not as an effective advocate.
NALSA is focusing on creating effective advocates for Indian law, no matter their racial background. Carter is determined to take what she has learned back home.
My goals after this is to go back to my tribe and to become an advocate for Indian country.
This was the first year the University of Montana hosted the National NALSA competition. Next year's event will be announced later this year. Reporting for the ICT Newscast from the homelands of the Salish and Kalispel people, I'm Robin Iron with the University of Montana School of Journalism in Missoula.
That is a slice of our Indigenous world. For all the latest, visit us at ictnews.org. From all of us in the newsroom, stay safe, my relatives.
This program is made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, a private corporation funded by the American people.